Welcome back to the My Journey podcast, the place where I document my freelance journey with the help of my good friend Tom Scott, who I'm happy to say is back on the mic with me this week. We discuss a whole range of business-related topics. We do this by randomising from the long list, interviewing incredible guests, and answering your questions. So, technical issues resolved. You're back on the mic with me this week. Tom, yep. How's things with you?
Good, thanks, Matt. Yeah, not bad. We're going into the next round of lockdown, aren't we? So I've got going back onto furlough. Yeah, it's going to be different, I think, but we'll see how it's going to work because everything been a bit more flexible this time with furlough. It should be okay. It's going to be more dipping in and out instead of having full days off, I think. I think that's how it's working anyway. Next week's going to be the proper start of it, so I'm sure I'll find out more then.
Yeah, one of these where you kind of learn how it goes as it goes along, kind of thing.
Yeah, pretty much. But yeah, other than that, not a lot really has been happening because I can't exactly do anything at the minute.
No, we can't. No, definitely not. The thing is, at least it's not as strict as it was the first time around. Like, we're not shut up in terms of we can only go out for one bit of exercise a day. It is nice to know we can just go out for a walk or run or whatever if we need to go for one and not be not think that people are curtain twitching, counting how many times we've been out the front door.
Exactly. Yeah,
it does feel like a bit of a step back, but I'm sure we'll get through it. So not much to update on then.
No, honestly, not a lot really. Just plodding through. My final exam's looming ever closer as we eke into December.
Feeling positive?
But, yeah, I suppose. I'm halfway through the learning of it, so this is the one where it's split 50-50 between Excel spreadsheets and ethics, so
right.
I feel I'm 50% of the way there.
And with the other results in your pocket almost, it gives you a bit of something to gauge in terms of how it should go.
Yeah, I definitely think after the last one as well, I'm not going to beat myself up as much because I was aiming for the distinction, but even if I get the minimum pass mark in this, I still walk away with a merit. So
all right, that's good.
I'm not feeling too bad about it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, how's things with you anyway?
Yeah, obviously I've been doing a lot on the podcast recently, so people pretty much know where I'm at. But it's quite odd. Yeah. I've actually had probably more inquiries in the last 2 weeks than I have for the month before that, so it's quite odd. And obviously some of them came before the announcements and stuff like that, so there might be no longer inquiries there now that we're kind of going into second phase of lockdown. But yeah, there's not, for people who've been listening to the podcast each week, there's not really too much that's changed really. Apart from the fact that we might have a lot of new listeners to the podcast. I mentioned this to you just before we came on the recording, but if anyone's not aware, the first guest we ever had on the podcast was a guy called Drew Povey, and he was from a TV show on Channel 4 called Educating Greater Manchester, and that has just returned for another series, and we saw a spike in listeners, to say the least. It was only earlier this week. And the stats refresh halfway through the week, and before we've even released this episode, where it's one of our better performing weeks just because of that appearance by Drew on the TV.
Yeah.
And I think it's on for twice again this coming week. And I'm not sure if it goes on beyond that, but yeah, so we might see another spike next week, which is really good.
Yeah, that's definitely good to see. Hopefully that leads into some other listens in other episodes as well, which should be good.
Yeah, definitely. Kind of in terms of stats wise, the appearance by Drew has probably given us the same as releasing a new episode. So it's been we've had 2 episodes out this week, which for a podcast of our size is great, really. And I would pretty much guess it's going to be all new people, because anyone who's a regular listener already has probably heard that episode, so it's unlikely they're going to go back and listen to it. All new people, and Drew shared some of the content I was putting out about him being on the podcast, so it's kind of reached people that way, so it's nice to have his support as well for the podcast. So yeah, if you've come from the Educating Greater Manchester welcome to the podcast, and hopefully this can be as inspirational as Drew Povey is. That's a very high bar to reach, but
yeah,
we can aim for it.
Definitely.
But yeah, like I said, not too much to update on, considering we've been doing the solo episodes, kind of keeping people up to date throughout them. So yeah, I think we just maybe dive into this week's topic.
Sounds good.
So this week, we are heading over to the long list, but we're not going to be randomising a topic because we've got one that's lined up that's very relevant given our introduction and what's going on in the world. The topic this week is going to be Lockdown 2.0. The kind of things we've written down here are lessons learnt from the first lockdown, the difference between being an employee versus a freelancer going through this, our kind of professional business approaches to this lockdown that's coming up, our personal approaches, and if we get time, I'll touch on some social media advice for businesses going through this lockdown. So yeah, I think maybe the best place to start is kind of going into this lockdown, given what we know about lockdown number one. How do you feel about it from a security point of view in terms of being an employee? Like, you've had experience of the Furlough System, you've had experience of coming back from the Furlough System. What are your views on it in terms of going into this next lockdown?
Honestly, I mean, I'm the same as I was when this first started, really. Is the furlough system there means that if I'm going to be put on it, because I mean, I've been fortunate enough to still be at that 100% pay mark, which has been great from an employee standpoint, great for the business to do so. So I've not noticed too much of a difference from that. But definitely the fact that, especially now they've extended furlough to March as well. Luckily, I mean, especially working in the finance side of things, I can see how the company's doing, and because the way with how ours works, it's not like products we're selling, it's the service, but we actually have learners in, so it's trying to keep them going. And with the way that furloughs worked, even people that are furloughed can still do training.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Which means for us, a lot of people actually, instead of there has been some that have gone on breaks because they're still working, but because other people have gone, they need to be 100% on it at work, basically. Whereas the people that have actually been furloughed have been able to dedicate more time towards it.
Nice.
So it's been quite a good balance, really. Like, we've seen a bit of a hit for the company, but it's been better than what I thought it was going to be, at least.
Yeah.
Which, to be fair, when you see that and you know there's that furlough system in there, I do feel fairly secure in how the job role is. Especially we had a team meeting as well where the boss basically came out and said, if anything, they would only be looking to employ more people.
Right. Okay.
So definitely, with a mixture of all of that definitely has given a bit more of a security feel for the job anyway.
Definitely. I think that's something I've thought, like, looking in, is like, as much as it's a hard situation to be in, not going to work and not having that kind of structure and routine and stuff, without a system like the Furlough system, that a lot of people wouldn't be in jobs, they would have been let go. So it is kind of like a security net there. The worry I had, and like this is why I'm saying, having gone through it and come back, is there was always that worry that when you did come back, what would be there? Would there still be a job there, or was it just prolonging the inevitable for many people? But it seems like it worked. It kept people, like, you went back to work full time at one point and was doing your exams and stuff like that. Like, it seemed to work from your experience, from me looking in anyway, in terms of that job security.
Yeah, well, definitely. Well, I mean, the way I've kind of looked at it overall is, I know unfortunately a lot of people have lost their jobs through all of this, but a lot of places are seeming to want to get back to how things were.
Yeah.
So for me, like, the use of the furlough system is when places have been like, we're going to have to get rid of someone, unfortunately, to keep the business going, but then with them aiming to then get back to exactly how things were, that job role is, surely they're going to have to then refill that job role at some point.
Yeah.
Because if unless they can find other ways around it. But I feel for most places, if that's the system they had running for so long and they're so adamant on getting back to exactly how things were before, they're going to need to fill that role. So with Furlough, if they've been able to just put someone on there, even if it just, like, obviously it's prolonging when they can actually come back, but hopefully as things do start to come back slowly, that then increases every other business, which then brings the need for that job role back again.
I think as well it's really benefited the businesses that have kind of had to, like this whole work from home if you can, if that's kind of hindered their output but not necessarily cut off their output, it's really helped them kind of businesses that are kind of like gauging this new level of output and where they're at and how they can work in these new situations. The places where I don't think Furlough has helped, and not that it has made things worse, but in like your hospitality sector and stuff like that, where they're literally not able to open. So they're not bringing in the revenue in order to have the intention to keep these people on, and top it up, like you said, has been done at your place, up to the 100% and stuff like that. So yeah, obviously each industry is different, and we're just speaking from our personal experiences of it. I think from my view as a freelancer, like the first time I was totally expecting to lose business. I just thought, this is it, we're heading into like a massive recession and businesses are going to be closing and stuff like that. And the way my clients reacted the first time around has filled me with confidence for the second time around. Like when I heard we were going into a lockdown, I just was like, okay, we might lose a little bit, but don't think it was going to be as drastic as I thought it was going to be the first time. The one issue, and this is not necessarily my clients, this is just almost as a marketing agency, freelancer, that kind of point of view, you're dependent on the business style of your clients. So my business is dependent on them. So for example, a lot of people who have like hospitality clients, they're losing work because their hospitality clients can't afford to keep them on. That's nothing to do with them as an agency or them as an individual. That's down to the kinds of businesses they're working with, which no one could foresee. Whereas I'm quite lucky, my businesses that I work with are in the tend to be B2B sector. So as long as the other businesses are operating, so like legal sector, that kind of thing, which is still going, there will be work for me to do for them. So it is an odd one, and I think you may have seen some of the stuff around, like, I don't know, it depends, because I'm in the world of freelancing, I see a lot of the stuff, but like the self-employed income support scheme, which is it's almost like Furlough but for people who are self-employed, and there's been lots of talk about that being reduced and that not matching up to where it was in lockdown 1, but I believe it's now going back up to that level, and it's kind of like quite good to know that there is a safety blanket there for you just in case things do take a turn for the worse. But
because has that been extended through to, is it January or has that gone all the way through to March?
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's might be until March, or that they're going to review it for March. Because basically the way the Furlough scheme works is that you're covered from now until through till March, whereas the income support scheme, you make a claim for a certain period, rather than being covered for that full period. You make the claim at each section. So there's, I think the first one's either back end of this month or into December when we met the first one. But yeah, they've not changed too much, but there is a lot of people that have been missed out, and they're actually probably getting a bit more specific in terms of who can apply. So the first one was just if you've been negatively affected. It was just like a blanket term, and you could interpret that in any way you wanted to. And then the next one was like negatively affected, and it gave examples. And then I think this time they're probably going to be a bit more specific again in terms of what negatively affected means, because it's hard for like a growing business. So you might say revenue was, let's say your revenue is £1,000, and at the beginning of the year and your revenue now is £1,500, well, someone might look at that and say, well, you've not been negatively affected, you've grown.
Yeah.
But you might have been aiming for £2,000 and you might have lost out on that extra £500 of business because of COVID. Someone might have said, I'm not using you because of COVID. So have you been negatively affected is the question there, because you've grown your business, but you're not growing it at the same rate. So there's a bit of ambiguity around that for some people I've heard from. And I think under the first one, it was very much apply for it because you have been negatively affected. You've lost business that you would have had. But I think the way it's going, it's going to be more, has your business declined rather than been negatively affected, which could mean a lot more people don't apply. But fingers crossed, going into next year, a lot of the people who've been missed out this year on them schemes will be brought under it, because they'll hopefully bring in the latest tax year and that kind of thing, which is what everyone's been waiting for. People who've set up who've only filed accounts or haven't filed accounts are missed out on support, which is a bit unfair, I feel, but hopefully that'll be all kind of brought back around in this next lot going into next year. So just quickly, so we've kind of covered the employee versus freelance security there. In terms of your approach going into this, and I think this we've written down professional business approach and personal approach as two separate things, but I think maybe your mindset for one will be the mindset for both. And in terms of, there's lots of talk around making goals and aiming for things and trying to do stuff. And I know that in lockdown 1, everyone started off, it was kind of like first few weeks was probably just a bit of sussing things out and seeing how it all worked. And then actually when we realised it was going to be around for a bit longer, people did start to set them goals and kind of trying to, either fitness goals, I know we spoke about that on here, or developmental goals in terms of learning new skills, that kind of thing. And obviously this is supposedly only for a 4-week period, it may be longer. But in terms of your professional approach to this, in terms of your career and your personal approach, are you going for more of a just take the 4 weeks as it comes, or are you setting them goals and giving yourself challenges and stuff like that to hit? Be interested to hear about that.
Business wise, I suppose it kind of blends into the personal wise as well, is just making sure I dedicate the proper time towards actually studying for this exam, because if I'm getting the time for it, it'd be stupid not to use it. And the thing is as well, because I have to wait 8 weeks for my results, it means I could be sat for that entire time. So I might have to redo it again come February time, but then because it's only certain windows throughout the year that you can actually sit this one exam. So right. I think I'd kick myself quite a lot if I had to wait all the way through to one of them, really.
Yeah.
So that wise, definitely. Personal approach for it, I'd definitely say through the last lockdown, I was probably in a very, very good mental and probably physical state. Then it probably pretty peak for me. So again, using the time through furloughed or weekends to try and get back to that, I think it's definitely going to be needed, especially with not knowing. Obviously, it's set for 4 weeks, but if it is going to be the 4 weeks or not, it's definitely going to be to combat that, really, I think. Because I think that's one of the big things that's definitely hitting a lot of people. It's just that not knowing, and it's one of the things as well. I don't really know who we can look to for that direct answer of when is this going to be over, because who knows? Who really knows about that? Because things can change daily. It's like you got so many moving parts with everything.
Yeah.
It's just, yeah.
It didn't help when, like, I think it was the day after it was announced, one of the big Tories or whatever came out and said, oh, it might be longer. And it was like, I almost thought as well, like, I think the first time around, I didn't really set myself, like, specific goals, but I, like, more general goals, like we said, like, try new things, take the opportunities and do stuff. And I developed my business quite a lot, changed a lot of things within my business, started a newsletter, started new different ways of doing the content, changed the pricing structure, all these different things, like little tweaks that I kind of used as a bit of a, like we said earlier in the discussion about this could have been a lot worse, this lockdown 1 for me. I kind of thought, well, let's make these changes because it's not as bad as you thought, and kind of if there is a little knock as a result of these changes, it's still not as bad as what you thought it was going to be. Whereas this time, I think because I changed so much earlier in the year, there's not too much I want to change from the business point of view, because it's like I've not really given that chance to settle in and work its magic yet, and it is working as far as I can see. So from a business point of view, this sounds like I'm not pushing myself, but I'm just going to be normal, and that is me trying to find new work, trying to build my clients up, but I'm not going to do too much extra on that point of view, because I just think as well, like coming up to Christmas as well, Christmas is always a bit of a funny time for business, because it's like some people step up like ready for next year 2021, and other people go, oh, it's Christmas, we'll just put everything off until after Christmas. So it's a really funny time, and so I'm just going to keep doing what I'm doing. And then from a personal point of view, I think the biggest issue, I think as well this time around, is like we were going into a summer, whereas now we're like going into a winter, which when you say about like you running and stuff like that, it's a really, really simple little anecdote, but borrow like a reflective jacket when I go running. I've never really had my own, like sometimes if I go late at night. And I was like thinking, why have I never bought a reflective jacket? Like, I run quite a bit, and it's because in winter I don't run, I go to the gym, and like that's not there, so I'll be running a lot more and doing stuff like that. But when you've been working 9 to 5 all day, to go out in the black and the cold and we've not had much bad weather so far, but when it starts getting really cold and rainy and icy and stuff like that, it's going to be so much harder to find that motivation. So one thing I am thinking of changing is working a bit later, and like I'm really bad at exercising in the morning, so I'm going to look at the middle of the day, like maybe work the morning and then take an hour and a half for myself just to go for a run or do something that I can't do on a night, that kind of thing, like go for a walk or whatever. Get that done in the middle of the day and then just work a little bit later. And then when it's nice and pitch black when I finish work, I can kind of just wrap up and sit and watch telly.
Yeah, I think that's definitely going to be a good approach to go ahead with. I think I'll definitely try and do the same sort of thing. Yeah,
because it's just, I think that's one thing we did kind of like, the weather wasn't too bad in lockdown 1, and also it was getting better weather as it went on. We had some really nice days during the first lockdown, like really hot days. I remember like we had a Zoom catch up with one of our mates and sat outside at like 10 o'clock at night, just still decent weather on Zoom. We're not going to be doing that in this one. So yeah, it's going to be
not a chance.
It's going to be completely different, I think. But yeah, it's interesting to hear like your approach and how it's different from lockdown 1 for you.
So for the final part of this, we are going to be going back to Burger King's marketing campaigns once again. I believe previously we've touched on their sponsorage of Stevenage Football Club, but this one is something that was a bit not different, I suppose, because they're always kind of touching on McDonald's with this, and hopefully some people have seen this, but Burger King have basically put out a tweet, basically been like, look, obviously we want your business, but at the same time there's many other places out there that do need your support. The graphic for this is straight up in big bold letters, order from McDonald's, which then goes further into talking about, like, we never thought we'd encourage you to do this, but also there's other places, KFC, Subway, etc., then followed by, or any other independent food outlets, too numerous to mention here, which I suppose it's good in a way because it's showing that they're wanting the support for everywhere, but at the same time it does still very much lead into going and supporting these bigger brands instead of some smaller independent chains, really. And just to really push in the fact as well that they are drilling in on this McDonald's is in their last sentence of it, it follows up with getting a Whopper is always best, but ordering a Big Mac is not such a bad thing. So even though they've taken the time to list all these other places, they've then jumped straight back to a Big Mac, so straight back to McDonald's, which, as far as I'm aware, normally they are very much, when they're putting some things up about McDonald's, they're always going against McDonald's, which I suppose they are competition. But what's your view on this one, Matt?
So Burger King are what you call a challenger brand. They're not the market leader and they're not a niche player in the game. They're somewhere in between, and it means they can be a bit more ambitious in their marketing. And Burger King have lived up to this in the past. They've done some pretty extreme stuff. They've taken pops at McDonald's in the past. I think they appreciate that McDonald's is the market leader. They might not agree with that, but they appreciate it. So a lot of the marketing is focused at taking market share away from McDonald's rather than other people. So it's not surprising that they've focused on McDonald's once again. But I think, like you say, they've mentioned these other brands, but there's been a bit of a backlash around the fact that they've not picked up on what... They've kind of misjudged the environment at the moment, and McDonald's isn't struggling as far as we're aware. Neither is KFC. As soon as we were allowed out in our car to go get takeaway food, there was queues at McDonald's, queues at KFC, queues at Burger King. They're not struggling in the same way that small local independents are. And like you say, they've kind of touched upon it within that statement, but I think they would have... They've won a lot of the conversation from McDonald's, and kind of a lot of people have gone, oh, that's really smart, that's really clever how they've kind of done this thing, and they've seemed to be the bigger person within that Burger King McDonald's rivalry. But actually, once the dust has settled and everyone's looked at it and they called a day, people are going, actually, you've missed the issue here. The issue is that the small independents are struggling, and they should have probably acted more like a market leader than a challenger brand in this situation, and gone for we know we're doing okay, but there's lots of small independents that are struggling. Go support them. If you want to come and get a Whopper, come and get a Whopper. But if you want to go and support your local artisan bakery or your local burger joint, then go do that, because they need it much more than us. And that would have been the more market leader approach, rather than the challenger brand, which is always trying to take a pop at people above them. So it was very smart. It's got a lot of people talking, and there's the argument, no news is bad news, in terms of if people are hearing about your brand, then they might be stimulated to think about going and getting a Whopper and going and buying that thing. But I do think it's maybe a little bit misjudged. What did you think to it?
Because I had seen this previously before we started discussing it. And straight away I did have the same thought, especially looking at the list of everyone on there. It was that exact same thing. It's but you guys are busy all the time. I've probably been to Burger King more in between the two lockdowns than I have probably the past couple of years, really. And there's always plenty of people in there.
Yeah.
Always plenty of people. And it just, as you say, it was the right idea. They just missed the mark a little bit, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of them things as well, because no one else seems to, or that I know of, has come out and done something similar to this. It's not like people were like, well, why aren't these big fast food chains coming out and saying, go support all the small independents? It wasn't something people were calling for. It was something that obviously would be nice to happen.
Yeah.
But it wasn't something that was forced at. So yeah, they've come out and done it. But at the same time, the Burger King are always seeming to put out a lot of content through their social media. That is probably up there as, I know, but McDonald's always come out with a lot of the creative things. I don't know if you saw their sundial billboard.
Yes, yeah, I've seen some of that kind of stuff. Yeah,
yeah, all that stuff is great, and as you say with Burger King, kind of putting out like challenging sort of stuff, it is always that little bit different, but both grab your attention in a different way, I believe.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of the stuff that Burger King done is like award-winning stuff, and I think I might potentially again do another video on this because a lot of the stuff they've done is really interesting, and although it is a big brand doing it, there's a lot that smaller brands can learn from it. But it just, I almost feel like I know why they went on the like telling people to buy McDonald's. That's the attention grabbing thing. I don't think it would have had as much impact if they'd have just said, don't buy from us, go support independents. So I think almost like the issue is like the body of the thing. It just doesn't play on the independents enough. It's just still focused on the big players, and I think they should have gone for an approach which is like, go buy from McDonald's, and then been like, actually, in fact, don't buy from either of us, go support local independents. And then they'd have got the double hit of both parts. But yeah, it's frustrating, I think, because go on.
I was going to say, looking at it, the way that it's pictured, that the whole like order from McDonald's, they could have even done some simple played on like order from McDonald's, then in the actual body, and by McDonald's mean, and then kind of had your McDonald's written down and had independents kind of coming off from all of that, and been like, this is what we mean. And then at the end they could have done the thing like, yeah, getting a Whopper's great, or even go get a Big Mac, but there's also like, I don't know, they could have done anything and even used an image from some independents that like it's a nice looking burger or something like that. Like, yeah, this is what we do, but these places also do this. Like, you can go there, which would have been a lot better, I think.
Yeah, I just think as well, like, if people are looking for good ideas for content, then I would definitely say check out Burger King, because they are good. This is just one that's been a bit of a... For anyone else, I would say this was a really good campaign, but for them, it just hasn't quite hit the mark that they normally hit. They're not normally ones to miss a point like this. But I think another brand to check out is Aldi. Like, at the moment, I picked them out in my newsletter. I've picked Burger King out in the past, but some of the stuff Aldi is doing at the moment, it's just real. It's just like, what Burger King does is creative and makes you, like, you've never thought of it before. Like, you go, oh, wow, that's really clever. Whereas Aldi, like, you read their stuff and you're like, it's just so obvious. Like, they did a thing about their 30th birthday party where they literally was like, no, like, saying that nobody cared that it was their 30th birthday. And, like, did this whole big thing about nobody caring it was their 30th birthday. And actually ended up being, like, a huge thing, and loads of different brands jumping in on it, like their competitors, Waitrose, Lidl, you know, all these different people, like, getting involved. And it's like, it's so obvious to say that people don't care about a brand's birthday, but no brand dares do it, and then Aldi do it, and it's a success. I know you said I think there's been a few other things as well that we've spotted, but yeah, definitely go check them out as well.
Just before we end up wrapping up, just because I know we've done a few questions on getting to know each other a bit more in previous episodes, but I've got to know, McDonald's or Burger King?
I'll be honest, I probably prefer McDonald's food, but I want to buy from Burger King. Because I don't like supporting like the really big brands, I think. But yeah, I'd probably do prefer McDonald's. Yourself?
Burger King.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm so happy in the past week or so, they have, because they've been running the reduced menu for so long, they finally brought back the Steakhouse burger, which is hands down the best fast food burger that you can get. From any big chain, at least, I'd say the Steakhouse burger is just amazing.
Well, that's good. Good to know. I'll have to go check it out.
Yep.
But yeah, I think just before we sign off, the usual thing: subscribe, leave a review, pass it on to a friend, especially if you're new, mean the world. But yeah, once again, until next time, thanks for listening.